Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine your daughter, the one you've spent years protecting, slipping away right in front of your eyes. Doctors have given up, specialists from across the world have failed, and you're left holding on to a thread of hope. But then, a barefoot boy, barely more than a child, walks in, claiming he can wake her up. A promise so impossible you almost laugh. Yet what happens next will shake your beliefs and redefine everything you thought you knew about love, pain, and miracles. How far would you go to save the one you love? What if the answer isn't science, but something far deeper? Stay with us as we unravel this story of hope, redemption, and the unimaginable. Now let's begin the journey. The sterile white walls of the hospital room were a constant reminder of the despair hanging in the air. Mia lay motionless on the bed, her small body hooked up to machines that beeped in steady rhythm, unhurried, indifferent, as though time was standing still for everyone but her. Her father, Jack, sat beside her, his large, calloused hands clutching her tiny limp one. His face, roughened by years of hard work and loss, was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes never strayed from her face. He hadn't left her side for days, not even to sleep. He could barely remember the last time he had rested. His body ached from the hours spent sitting in that cold hospital chair. But he didn't care. His daughter was slipping away, and he wasn't going to leave her alone. 7 days. That's how long it had been since Mia collapsed at the breakfast table, laughing one moment and unconscious the next. Doctors had no answers. Specialists were flown in from all over the world, their advanced technology and supposed genius offering nothing more than hope and uncertainty. She might wake up, one had said. She might not, another added, their voices equally devoid of conviction. The silence that followed was unbearable. No one knew what was wrong or why this was happening. Jack wasn't a man to sit idly by, and certainly not when his daughter needed him. He had built bridges with his hands, carried steel beams through the air with cranes, poured foundations that held entire buildings. But none of that prepared him for the helplessness of watching his little girl lie in a coma, her tiny chest rising and falling in the most mechanical of ways. He hadn't realized until now just how fragile she was, how much he had taken for granted. He'd been so consumed by his work, so focused on providing for her, that he had forgotten to truly listen, to truly be there. He hadn't even seen the signs, hadn't noticed that she'd started to grow quieter in the weeks leading up to the collapse. His heart ached with guilt, but he pushed it down, forcing himself to stay strong. For her. But as the days wore on, even his strength began to wane. He could feel the walls of despair closing in, the quiet hum of the machines mocking him. They were waiting. The doctors spoke in whispers, discussing next steps, but they weren't talking to him. Not really. He was just a father, a man whose wealth wasn't enough to save his daughter. But what if money could? What if science could? That's when Blake Henderson, the billionaire tech mogul, made his entrance. He strolled into the room like a man who owned the world, flanked by his security team and a media entourage, his sunglasses gleaming like a shield. He'd read about Mia in the papers, and now he saw an opportunity. "We'll give her the best money can buy," he promised, his voice dripping with certainty. Top neurologists, AI diagnostics, experimental treatments, everything for free, no cost. Jack looked up, his face hardening. "Will it bring her back?" he asked. Blake laughed, an arrogant sound that filled the sterile space. "Trust me, I know how to wake her up." Jack didn't trust him, but desperation clouded his judgment. He agreed. The next few days were filled with machines, simulations, and virtual reality headsets, but nothing worked. Mia remained as still as ever. The specialists came and went, their diagnoses just as empty as the room. By Sunday evening, even Blake had disappeared, leaving behind only the hum of machines and a growing sense of futility. Jack stayed. He read Mia's favorite stories, played her favorite lullabies, rubbed lotion on her tiny feet, and talked to her about the moon, how bright Venus had been in the sky the night before. He didn't care if it seemed pointless. He wasn't leaving her. Not again. Then one evening, something strange happened. A nurse appeared at the window, tapping softly. "Mr. Henderson," she whispered, "there's a boy here, says he wants to help." "A boy?" Jack asked, confused. What boy? The nurse pointed to the lobby. There, sitting on a cold metal bench, was a barefoot child. He couldn't have been older than 11. His hoodie was oversized, the sleeves frayed, and his jeans were torn. His face was dirty, his eyes strangely clear and unblinking. When Jack approached him, the boy stood up. "Are you Mia's father?" he asked, his voice calm, certain. "Yes," Jack said, still uncertain. "Who are you? I know how to help her," the boy said, his tone unwavering. Jack blinked, unsure if he had heard right. "What did you say?" "I can wake her up." It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was simply a statement of fact. Jack, worn thin by the weight of the last few days, could have easily dismissed him. But something in the boy's eyes stopped him. "Listen," the boy continued. "She's not lost. She's just waiting. But she doesn't know if it's safe to come back." He looked Jack in the eyes, piercing through the layers of fear and doubt that had built up inside him. "You need to give her something, something the hospital can't provide. She needs your truth, your pain, the stuff you've been hiding." Jack stood frozen. What did this child know? "Who are you?" he asked again, but the boy didn't answer. "Can I sit with her?" the boy asked, his eyes never leaving Jack's. Against his better judgment, Jack nodded. "Fine," he muttered. The boy walked into Mia's room and stood beside her, placing one hand gently on her head. His lips moved silently. Then he turned to Jack. "Now it's your turn," the boy said. "She needs to hear you. Not the man who's been trying to fix things. She needs to hear the father you've kept hidden, or the one who's been too afraid to speak up." Jack's heart thudded in his chest. His throat tightened. He hadn't said the words in years, not since the day Mia collapsed. "I wasn't there, baby," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I was at work. I missed your breakfast. I missed your smile. I should have been home. I should have been there for you." Tears spilled down his cheeks, his grip tightening on her hand. "Please, come back. I'll never miss another second. I promise." There was silence, and then, for the first time in days, the heart monitor beeped just once, but it was faster, stronger. Jack froze, staring at the screen, his breath caught in his throat. "Did you see that?" he whispered. The boy nodded, but said nothing. "She's listening," the boy said softly. Before Jack could respond, the boy turned to leave. Jack stopped him. "What's your name?" he asked desperately. The boy paused at the door. "They call me Elijah," he said, and then he was gone. Jack watched as the door clicked shut, his mind racing. Who was Elijah? And why did it feel like he was a part of a world Jack didn't even know existed? The next morning, as Jack sat by Mia's bed, he noticed something impossible. Her fingers twitched. Not in response to any machine, not prompted by any nurse, she simply moved, slowly, but it was a start, and for the first time in days, Jack believed. Is Elijah truly the miracle he seems to be, or is there something more to his presence than meets the eye? Could the power of a father's love really defy science and bring Mia back from the brink? As Jack sat there, lost in thought, a knock came at the door. The nurse looked to him with confusion. "Mr. Henderson, we've checked the security footage. There's no sign of the boy you mentioned. No one by that name has visited." Jack stood up slowly, his heart pounding. Elijah had never been on the cameras. His mind raced with questions. His gaze returned to Mia. The machines had started to beep differently now. Could it be? Could Elijah be real, or was he something else entirely? The answers he sought could change everything, but would they be what he was prepared to hear? Jack stood at the foot of Mia's hospital bed, his mind spinning with the events of the night. The boy, Elijah, had vanished as mysteriously as he had arrived. His words still echoed in Jack's ears. "She's listening, but she needs you. Your truth, your pain." Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Elijah wasn't just some stray child, but something much more. The hospital staff had no record of Elijah's visit, and there was no sign of him anywhere on the security footage. Yet Jack knew what he saw. He had felt it. And when Mia's fingers twitched, something no doctor or machine had only made the mystery even more perplexing. The morning passed in a blur. Jack had barely eaten or slept. He sat by Mia's side, watching the monitors flicker. Her body remained still, but Jack felt a strange pull, a connection that hadn't been there before. The numbness in his heart, the one that had settled in after his wife's death, seemed to be melting away. His daughter's life, her very future, was in his hands. And it was clear now, Elijah wasn't the only one who could help Mia. Jack had spent so many years hiding his emotions, burying his grief, trying to be the strong father, the provider. He had sacrificed so much, but in doing so, he had lost the very thing that made him human. Love. Connection. He had tried to build bridges, but he hadn't built one for his own heart. And now Mia lay here in this sterile room, waiting for him to find the strength to open that bridge again. But there was still doubt. What if Elijah had been a figment of his imagination? What if Mia's recovery was just a fluke, a coincidence? The logical part of him screamed that the boy couldn't have done what he claimed. But deep down, Jack knew something else. She was listening. She was listening because he had been listening to his own pain, his own heart, his own deepest fears. As Jack leaned over Mia's bed, gently brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, the door creaked open. He didn't look up at first. He was lost in thought, in the web of confusion and hope that had been spun around him in the past few days. But then a voice broke through his reverie. "Mr. Henderson," a nurse called softly, "there's someone here to see you." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He straightened, wiping his eyes quickly. He hadn't heard the nurse's footsteps approach, but now, as she stood in the doorway, there was something different in her expression, something almost apologetic. "Who is it?" Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He didn't want to see anyone, no doctors, no specialists, certainly not more people offering empty promises. He didn't need anyone else's words. He needed his daughter back. The nurse hesitated, looking down for a moment before meeting Jack's eyes. "It's him," she said quietly. "The boy, Elijah." Jack froze, his pulse quickened, and for the briefest moment he wondered if he was losing his mind. It couldn't be. He just vanished, like smoke, right in front of me. There's no way. But then the boy walked in, barefoot, same torn hoodie, same piercing eyes that seemed to see right through Jack. And as he entered the room, the air seemed to shift, to hum with something that felt almost sacred. Elijah didn't speak immediately. He simply stood by the door, his presence overwhelming in its calm. Jack didn't know whether to run to him or to yell at him. He wanted answers. He wanted to know why. Why had he come? Why had he helped? "Is she awake yet?" Elijah asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," Jack replied, trying to hold back the frustration, the panic that was starting to rise again. "She's still not awake. What do you want from me? What did you do to her?" Elijah didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to Mia's bed, pausing to look down at her. His fingers brushed the edges of her blanket, and for a moment, Jack thought he saw something in the boy's eyes. Something old, something wise. "She needs more than you've been giving her," Elijah finally said, his voice low but certain. "You've been trying to fix her with machines, with science, but she needs you to fix yourself first. You've been running from this pain, Jack. You've been afraid to confront it." Jack's chest tightened. The boy's words were like daggers, sharp and true, but they were also a lifeline. Could it really be this simple? Could healing his own heart, truly facing his grief, bring Mia back? The guilt hit him again, harder this time. He had been so focused on being the provider, the protector, that he'd forgotten what Mia truly needed. She needed him, the real him, the man who had laughed with her, who had whispered stories to her, who had held her close at night and told her everything would be okay. He'd stopped doing that. He'd stopped living. He was a ghost in his own life, trapped by his own pride, his own pain. Elijah turned to Jack then, his gaze steady and unwavering. "You're the only one who can bring her back, but you need to believe." Jack swallowed hard, his throat thick with emotion. Believe? He had lost so much, and the fear of losing Mia, of not being enough, was almost more than he could bear. But in that moment, staring at the boy who had somehow known all his buried fears, Jack felt something stir inside him. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, Mia. I wasn't there. I failed you." The words felt like a weight lifted off his chest. He hadn't realized just how much he had kept inside until that moment. Suddenly, the machines started to beep. Faster. Stronger. Mia's fingers twitched again. It wasn't a coincidence this time. It wasn't a fluke. And Jack knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. Is it really possible that facing his own grief can awaken Mia, or is there something deeper at play that Jack hasn't yet understood? Can he truly open his heart again, or is he forever trapped by his own fear? As Jack watched his daughter's fingers move, he wondered if this was just a glimpse of what was to come, if the truth was about to be revealed in a way he could never have imagined. He had opened the door to something larger than himself, and now he would have to face what it meant to believe in the impossible. Would Mia wake up for good, or was there more to Elijah's visit than Jack had realized? The days blurred into one another, the rhythm of machines and the hum of the hospital lights becoming Jack's only reality. He sat beside Mia's bed, his heart heavy with a mix of hope and doubt. Her fingers had twitched once again, and the doctors who had once been skeptical were now watching her more closely, their expressions filled with disbelief. But Jack wasn't sure. He couldn't trust that this was real. Every moment felt fragile, like a dream he was too afraid to wake from. Elijah had disappeared again, leaving behind only his cryptic words, "She needs you. She's waiting for you to believe." But what if Jack was too late? What if the part of him that had buried his grief, buried his love, was too broken to save Mia? One morning, as Jack sat alone in the room, the door creaked open. He didn't look up at first. His mind was lost in a haze of uncertainty, and the sterile silence of the room had become suffocating. But then a voice, soft, familiar, reached him. "Mr. Henderson, she's awake." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He jerked his head up, his breath caught in his chest. The nurse stood at the door, a hesitant smile on her face, but it wasn't enough. He couldn't believe it, not yet. She couldn't be. Not after all this time. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The nurse nodded, her eyes wide with shock. "Yes, she's awake, Mr. Henderson. Mia is awake." Without thinking, Jack bolted from his chair and rushed to Mia's side. His heart was pounding, his breath ragged. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed her hand. For the first time in days, she felt warm, alive. "Mia," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Mia, baby." Her eyelids fluttered, and then, slowly, painfully, she opened her eyes. They were the same deep brown eyes that Jack had spent every waking moment staring into when she was just a child, but now they were filled with confusion, fear, and a strange emptiness, as if she had been wandering through a place she couldn't remember. "Daddy? Daddy?" she heard, her voice weak, fragile. "Daddy, where am I?" Tears sprang to Jack's eyes, and he took her hand, holding it tightly, afraid to let go. "You're in the hospital, sweetheart. You've been sick, but you're okay now. You're awake." Mia blinked, her gaze flickering over him, then around the room, her confusion deepening. I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. It's all blurry." "It's okay," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's okay. You don't have to remember right now. You're here. That's all that matters." But something was wrong. Mia didn't seem fully there. She didn't have that spark in her eyes that Jack had always known, the light that made her who she was. It was like she was still lost in some dark corner of her mind, somewhere far away. "I don't want to be here," she whispered, looking at him with a desperate expression. "I don't want to be alone." "You're not alone, Mia," Jack said, his heart aching as he tried to comfort her. "I'm here. I'll never leave you again. I promise." But even as he spoke those words, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that something had shifted in her. She wasn't the same girl who had collapsed at the breakfast table, the one who had smiled and laughed with him just a week ago. She was distant, like a part of her was still missing. And then, just as suddenly as the moment had begun, Jack heard a soft, familiar laugh. He froze, the blood draining from his face. It was Elijah, the boy who had appeared out of nowhere, the boy who had known things no one else could know. Jack turned around sharply, his heart racing, and there he was, standing in the doorway, smiling that same serene, knowing smile. "Is she okay?" Elijah asked, his voice calm, his presence overwhelming, like a weight in the room that Jack couldn't explain. "Where did you go?" Jack demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and relief. "Where the hell did you go, Elijah? Why are you always disappearing and appearing? What did you do to her?" Elijah's smile didn't waver. He didn't move closer to the bed, but stood watching Mia with a quiet intensity. "She's come back," he said simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "But she's not back," Jack shot back, his voice rising. "She's not the same. She's still lost in there. What did you do to her?" Elijah's expression softened, and he stepped forward slowly, his bare feet silent on the floor. "She's not lost, Jack. She's just waiting." "For what?" Jack spat, his frustration boiling over. "For you to come back? To fix her? You don't know anything. You don't know what it's like to lose someone, to have them slip away and feel like you can't do anything." "I know exactly what it's like," Elijah said softly, his gaze never leaving Mia. "I know what it's like to be lost, to be forgotten, to be invisible. But that's not her anymore. That's not you either." Jack took a step back, his chest tightening. What did Elijah mean by that? What did he know? Mia stirred again, her eyes blinking in confusion as she looked up at Elijah. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Elijah's smile deepened, but there was sadness in it now. "I'm just someone who was once like you," he said, his voice gentle, almost soothing. "I came to remind you both of something, that even when it feels like everything is lost, even when the world tells you that you're not enough, there's always something more, something worth fighting for, something worth coming back to." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. Elijah wasn't just some boy. He wasn't a ghost or a figment of Jack's imagination. He was something else entirely, a reminder of everything Jack had forgotten, of everything he had been too afraid to face. And as Elijah turned to leave, he left behind a single lingering thought that Jack couldn't escape. "She'll come back to you, Jack, but you have to remember what it means to fight for her." What did Elijah truly mean when he said Mia would come back to Jack? Was he right? Had Jack forgotten what it meant to truly fight for her? Jack's eyes flickered to Mia, who was staring at the door where Elijah had stood as though she knew something Jack didn't. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The room felt thick with anticipation. Jack didn't know how long they sat there, minutes, hours, but what he did know was this: he would never let go of her again. What does it truly mean to fight for someone you love? Can you ever truly find your way back after so much time has passed?